Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Vandy Blitz. We are all here to talk about the NBA today because the season just started. There's a lot of basketball being played throughout the holidays and everything, and we want to talk about it. So, first of all, there's some interesting topics going on. We're coming off a day with a lot of games, including a 20-point Knick victory over the Bucks. I know a lot of people wanted to talk about that. And then we're seeing some surprising teams like the Cavaliers and the Magic. And overall, the NBA landscape, really interesting. I think there's some parity. I think it's really interesting. What do you guys think of the season so far?
Yeah, Ethan, if you don't mind me jumping in, I think it's one thing that I'm interested in seeing is how these teams are going to be playing a schedule where they're not traveling as much. And we've already started to see these back-to-back games with the past 2 days having the Wizards and the Magic.
Right.
And the thing I think that might be something we'll see, I think that these teams are going to be able to adjust to their opponent. And I think you'll be able to have like some not as talented teams beating more talented teams just on the basis that they can make those adjustments, in between games and kind of can have a familiarity with their opponents.
I think an interesting way that'll affect the game too is with star players like Giannis and Steph Curry. When teams game plan for them in the playoffs, they perform quite differently. So could be interesting to see how that affects that. But just I'm gonna pull up some of the NBA games that were played yesterday to talk some specifics, and then we'll each pick a team to go a little bit more in depth on. But yesterday, let's talk about this Knicks-Bucks game. Are the Knicks good, or is this a hot start?
No,
I think it's a hot start. I love the Knicks, but we just aren't ready. I think it's really exciting to see a game like that, but I don't think it means much. You look at the Nets Hornets yesterday. The Hornets had a great game, but I think that just happens. But no, the Knicks are nothing.
I don't know if the Hornets are in the same category. I think the Hornets are.
I know, but it's still an upset that I wouldn't expect in a normal season.
Yeah, no. I think, and being a Knicks fan, I think it was exciting to see that happen. Exciting to see Julius Randle drop 27 points. You had
Alfred Payton started to.
Julius Randle had
good.
29 points. Alfred Payton had 27.
Yeah.
RJ Barrett had 17. So there was the players that you want to see scoring were scoring and
they were making threes too.
But look, I'm with you, Wilf. I think that was kind of one of those games where they just play well and the Bucks don't play as well as they should, and they end up winning the game. But I don't think it means anything big term or long term.
Yeah, it is the NBA after all. There are a lot of, anybody can win a game on any given night. But with the Knicks specifically, I think a lot of this improvement that we're seeing in these first three games, even their two losses, they played much better with that one game. RJ Barrett playing very well in the first half and controlling, they haven't played badly this season. That's, I think, a lot due to the addition of Tom Thibodeau as their head coach. I think that change in coaching has raised the floor of this squad. I think another year for RJ, another year for Mitchell Robinson. I think this team is like legitimately better than some other teams right now, such as the Bulls. The Bulls look like an absolute dumpster fire. They're getting beaten badly in each of their first couple of losses. And then we have other teams like the Wizards. Like, I thought the Wizards were a playoff contending team with Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook. I still do, but they're starting 0-3. What do you guys think of the Wizards? Have you been watching many of their games?
Yeah, I actually had a bet on them this past game against the Magic. So I was watching that game. It was kind of unfortunate. I think they played pretty well. Obviously, Bradley Beal had points in the 30s, I believe.
Russell Westbrook was out in this last game too.
Yeah. So no, all their pieces weren't there, but I agree with you, Ethan. I think they do look like a playoff contention team in my eyes. So I'm just hoping that I wish the best for them. I hope they can do well. But you never really know at the end of the day with the NBA, like you said. So.
Yeah, and yesterday I was watching the Sixers game with my cousin from Philly, and he's like, "Oh, we have so much future. They're so good, obviously, with that Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid core." But what are you guys' thoughts on their just demoralizing loss to the Cavs?
Well, it's always interesting when Joel Embiid and Andre Drummond go against each other because
Yeah.
Joel Embiid is an elite. He's he is the best center in the league. Him and Jokic are up there for that title. Drummond is not, but he thinks he is. So it becomes this little like ego fight on the court that's funny to watch, and both guys get fired up. And usually Embiid wins, but he was out. And this Cavs team is good though. Like don't sleep on him too much. Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, they're looking potent offensively. Really good stuff. I was watching the podcast or the second channel of a YouTuber called Kenny Beecham called Called Game. He was talking about the Cavs a lot and how they've made a lot of improvements this offseason. So I'm expecting to see, I mean, I don't think they're going to be like a top team like they are record wise right now, but I think they're going to consistently compete with more teams like this. So I don't think this is too bad a reflection on the 76ers, but if the 76ers do want to be good, Tobias Harris is going to have to up his play for them.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well. I don't see the Sixers like becoming like a team that really is threatening like a possible like finals run if they don't have that third guy step it up, and that would have to be in Tobias Harris.
Yeah.
I think they should trade him.
Yeah, I think
he wants that contract.
If I were the Sixers, I would try to acquire James Harden for Simmons right now. I just think that like.
But they can't give up Simmons.
If I'm the Sixers, I do that because of the fit with Embiid and Harden. But if I'm the Rockets, I do that. But I don't know. If I'm picking between Embiid and Simmons for the long run, who are you picking? Because
Embiid.
I don't think it's that clearly Embiid. I think Simmons is a lot less injury prone. And he can be that kind of like Giannis type of player that controls the offense. It's more of a perimeter-based league. It's a valid question to ask.
Yeah,
but I think that there's more of a. Sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say that I think that there's more of a rarity for a player like Embiid. I don't know. I mean, Simmons obviously is a very unique player in himself, but I think that Embiid is really developed, and you've seen him come along in the league, and he's just such a great big man that I feel like you just can't lose that presence in Philadelphia. Like that would be a huge issue if they lost that.
The fit with James Harden is also like literally a fit made in heaven basketball wise. So I mean, I guess if you're Philly, you make that trade, but I mean, the James Harden just doesn't really have leverage. So if the Rockets don't want to trade James Harden to the Sixers, if the package is like, even though Ben Simmons seems like the best asset, if they don't want to give up Ben Simmons, like it's just not happening.
I think we need to recognize like James Harden's performance the other night is just incredible. Like his roster was unreal. Like I think 3 like undrafted rookies, like 9 players in total, and Harden carried the team on his back, managed to get it into overtime against the Trailblazers. He had 44 points and 17 assists. So
well, let's not let this like Harden drama overshadow. You're right to point that out, how good he is as a player, because he is a revolutionary scoring talent, and that's why his value is so high. But that's also what makes it so hard to move him, because he is this enigma out on the court that requires so much attention. You kind of need to build your team around him when you have him, or else you're not maximizing your success. And that's a big roster overhaul for a lot of teams to make, especially with the off-court stuff, all this drama, all him like being going out to clubs and getting fined for COVID restrictions where he could have spread that to other players in the league. Like there's a lot of things to consider here. And honestly, the fact that we haven't seen him get moved yet is a little odd to me. So I think I think he might play out this season on the Houston Rockets with Christian Wood, just because he lacks any leverage to get to the destinations he wants to get to. And he's just not going to not play basketball. So I think we're going to end up seeing James Harden at least play a good amount of this season in the Houston Rockets jersey, because I think if the trade were going to happen or at this stage in the season, we would hear more about it.
Yeah, and going back to the Sixers, we were talking about that third guy, and I think a player that the Sixers should have never let slip away is JJ Redick. He's a great perimeter shooter, very solid dribbler, and he brings that locker room presence that I know Dwight Howard, they say, brings that, but I think that's the type of guy the Sixers need, a really good sharp shooter. And Tobias just isn't that the past couple of games.
Tobias Harris, JJ Redick is not the kind of player that you can have as like a really third option player though.
It's not or like a Kevin Love. Sorry, a Kevin Love's a great player that would fit for the Sixers. I think he'd be a great number 3.
He would, but I don't know how that spacing would work with him, Ben Simmons, and Joel. But I understand what you're saying. They need like a third weapon to like.
Yeah, I was gonna say they need a third guy, but I don't know if Kevin Love would even be the right option either, because you look to like the role that Kevin Love played on the Cavs, and he was like, and it's just much different with 2 bigger guys such as Embiid and Simmons. So
I just someone like McCollum. That's what they need.
Yeah.
A guard, a shifty, crafty
that would be awesome.
Guard. But no, the Blazers are looking pretty impressive after that win against the Houston Rockets as well. But I think we should each dive in. We all selected a team before we started recording, and let's just talk about them a little bit. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I selected the Warriors, and they're a team for me that I thought would have been way better. And it's either Curry lost a step or they're just not what they were. They're not. They beat the Bulls by 1, and they lost to the Nets and Bucks by 30. And
I'm not arguing.
I think they're another.
Don't blame it on Curry. This is not on Curry.
I know they're another lottery pick team this year, and it was just very disappointing to see. I used to love watching them. It's always sad to watch their dynasty fall apart, and I just don't think they're the same as they ever will be.
I mean, I don't know. We see they train the whole offseason to have Klay Thompson in the lineup. He tears his Achilles.
That's true.
Draymond Green doesn't play these first couple games. They're 1-2.
Maybe I'm overreacting.
Maybe you might be. And Steph Curry is a 2-time MVP. He's the first unanimous MVP. He's the greatest shooter of all time, in my opinion, up there for the best point guard of all time with Magic Johnson. And I think that we're going to see this team not be terrible. I don't think they're going to be good.
They're an 8 seed at best.
But that's because Kelly Oubre and Andrew Wiggins are not Klay Thompson and Kevin.
No.
You know, it's going to
They're nice players. They're
nice, but they're not that.
And I was watching the game, and Wiggins and Oubre get like 30 shots combined, 40 shots combined, and they go like Oubre was like 3 for 15, Wiggins was like 4 for whatever.
Yeah,
like they're not pulling their weight at all. They're not helping Curry out whatsoever. But I did want to point out one thing. I watched James Wiseman, and he looks like a very exciting prospect. So I think if they can build around Curry and when Klay gets healthy, obviously that's a whole different story. But Curry, Wiseman, and Klay together, that could be a very dynamic trio, and that team could go places in the future, in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say the dynasty is like, or not. The dynasty is over. Their dominance is over. But I wouldn't say that, you know, the potential in Golden State is gone.
The window hasn't closed yet.
Yeah, not at all.
Fair.
No.
We still have Steph. You still have a chance.
But Wiseman developing, I think that's the big thing. I think Wiseman is.
What are you saying, Thea?
I said I think James Wiseman is the key to that team because he's played 2-3 games in the NBA so far, and he's already looked like a good solid player. So
he does look really solid.
Then.
Not to mention he only played 2 games or 2 or 3 games in college and didn't even play in the exhibition preseason. So this is like seeing James Wiseman. So a lot to be impressed by. So definitely a good team to watch, Andrew. Anybody who's next?
I'll go. And the team that I selected, in my opinion, is the 3rd best team in the Western Conference, and that's the New Orleans Pelicans. I think that you're about to see just the emergence of Zion. Brandon Ingram is still growing into just an incredible scorer. And I really like the additions of Bledsoe and Steven Adams. I think that they just have a really, really dominant front court that I think has the strength and the power to go up against Anthony Davis and LeBron James deep into the Western Conference playoffs. And they have the guard play with Lonzo and Bledsoe. So I know it's early, But from what I've seen out of the Pelicans so far, now that they have a competent coach in Steve Van Gundy, I think that they're really going to make that next step. And the NBA does an incredible job of really highlighting those star players, and we're going to be seeing a lot of primetime Pelican games over the next couple months.
I definitely think that
to watch.
I definitely think that Zion is that kind of game-changing player that will take a team to, a different level. And I think when we saw him play 38 minutes the other day, he got 38 points. Like once we see this guy on the court more, it's only going to go up. Like the amount that we respect Zion and see, oh, this guy's good at basketball. But third in the Western Conference is a lot. That's a very, very competitive conference. I think teams like the Utah Jazz, we'll get into that later, have their number there. And I don't know. I think the Nuggets could be argued. I think Lakers, Clippers, very, very competitive conference, but Zion is that kind of player potentially. So if he maximizes that and becomes the potential, like I think in a couple years he can be in MVP conversations. He's that level of player. If he does that, then yes, this could be a top three team. It just depends when Zion takes that jump.
Yeah. And I think
my top three, I just want to make that clear. I have the Lakers, the Mavs, and the Pelicans. That's my top three.
The Mavs and the Pelicans. Oh, damn, the Clippers and Kawhi, Paul George. Wow. They're getting slapped on. The Jazz just getting absolutely just disrespected. We're going to talk about it.
And I think Stan Van Gundy, he can really allow Zion to elevate to that star status. Like we saw him do that in Orlando with Dwight. I'm excited to see what he does with JJ Redick, his former coach. So I think it's a really fun situation, as well as Brandon Ingram, who never really got that chance in LA, it was his first All-Star season last year. So there's a lot of cool storylines coming out of New Orleans.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one thing also. I think watching the Pelicans play, I've seen Lonzo, and he looks like a new and improved player.
Really good.
He's able to shoot the ball now, which is huge. And I mean, he's always been sound defensively, but he just looks like he's really stepped up his game. He put that work in the offseason. And I think that is really going to elevate the Pelicans, I think, which was kind of Jacob's point with the guard play that they have, as well as the front court. So, yeah.
I can move on for the next team. The one that I was looking at was honestly just not really a team that I see like possibly making a title run, but the Atlanta Hawks. It was pretty like I've watched like a little bit of their game against I forget who was against it, but obviously Trae Young, amazing player, he's looking good. But I really like the offseason ads that they had this season with Gallinari and Bogdanovich, and I also am a big fan of I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Kevin Huerter. Yeah.
Murder, whatever. I don't know.
I could really see them like the rebuild is like it's really coming to fruition, and I think that they could make some noise. They could definitely sneak into the playoffs, and I'm pretty pleased with how they're looking so far. They're probably going to go 3-0 after tonight, playing a Pistons team. And, that's what I was really going to talk about.
Yeah, no, the Hawks are a good team. I guess we'll just see what Trae Young, can carry this team to, because he's that level of involved player like James Harden, the only player that was more involved in their offense last season than Trae Young was James Harden. So I feel like this team goes where Trae Young goes. So we'll see if he can keep up some of that stellar work with that, 37 points in the first game and all that. But I want to move to the Utah Jazz because I feel like that is a team that is interesting here because I think there's some differing opinions. I'm obviously high on them. I think there's some people in here that are low on the Utah Jazz. I think this team is going to be top 3 in the Western Conference. I think they're going to surprise you. I think the Utah Jazz are fundamentally and on paper, one of the best teams in basketball. And I think they have the means to make a deep run in the playoffs this year. I do.
Yeah, and I think it's good to see that Rudy Gobert, he had 17 plus rebounds in the first 2 games, which was his career high after getting that big deal. So you have him and Mitchell. I think they're a really nice team. I really relate them to the Kansas City Chiefs before they had Patrick Mahomes. They're just a great team, but to me, they just don't have that true like best guy. They're just a solid 5 seed in the West that won't go further than the Western Conference Finals to me. But
Yeah,
really solid
I
team.
understand that view, but we saw this team in the playoffs last year with Mike Conley stepped up in the playoffs, but all season in his first season, he was banged up, injured, didn't get to properly adjust. We're seeing him play a lot better now. They didn't have a 20-point per game scorer in Bogdanovich. They got back Derek Favors to back up Rudy Gobert at center and really, bolstered their interior defense. There's a lot of this is one of the best 3-point shooting teams last season. It was the best 3-point shooting team in the league. And Donovan Mitchell is a young star. So I'm counting on him to make another jump this season after his performance in the playoff. And that's what I think will propel this team to be more successful than a lot of people think. But I understand that view too. And it's, the fact that that's sort of this team is obviously not a bad team. It's just about where they fall, I feel like, in the top 8 seeds between most people here.
Totally. Like, I just want to rephrase, like, it's not disrespect towards the Jazz. I agree with you. I think they have.
I'm just poking fun. Mostly when I was pointing out earlier, I was yeah.
No, totally. I just I'm amazed at just the depth of the league right now. I think there's so many solid teams that, can get hot, win 4 games, in a 7-game series and really do something like the Miami Heat did this past season. And if this year that's the Jazz, then I mean, it'd be fun to watch. But I think that the league is so deep, and we're not in a place like we were where I don't think the Lakers will win it this year. I think there's a lot of teams that could knock them out.
The Lakers are pretty. I agree with that. I think there's a lot of parity in the league, but the Lakers are looking pretty damn good so far this season.
The Schroeder Harrell connection is pretty fun to watch.
Yeah. For sure.
All right. Well, the team that I wanted to bring up was the Mavericks, who Jacob mentioned in his top 3. So, I agree with that one. But no, I think Doncic is obviously looking amazing as he always is. Porzingis being out is obviously a big, I guess, negatively affects the team, obviously, but. And his return date is still questionable as of now, so who knows? But when he does come back, which I'm assuming will be sometime this season, that's going to be a huge addition, obviously, to the team. And they're already playing well as of now. I mean, they're 1-2, but it's early on. So they also have James Johnson, they have Boban, they have Josh Richardson, who played really well the other night. They have Tim Hardaway, who also played really well the other night. So they have these little players who are really solid role players who can put up points when they need to. And obviously with Porzingis being out, they have players that can fill in that gap and score the points that need to be scored to win games. So I think the Mavericks are looking like a really, really solid team this year, and I see them going pretty far. Probably not to the finals, but I could see them making a decent run in the playoffs. So, that's my pick.
No, for sure. Luka is one of those, I think, generational talents that's going to sort of define at least a term of the NBA's history coming up. I think it's going to be like him, Zion, John Morant, Trae Young, Donovan Mitchell.
He's just so crafty. Like when you watch him play, he will get people up in the air and then get fouled and make shots. He's not the most athletic player on the court ever, but he's always just making shots that you
fundamentally very, very good at basketball.
Yeah.
Just great basketball. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I want to add one thing.
Oh yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Wilf. I don't mean to interrupt.
I was just gonna say that the fact that they were 77-27 at half, the biggest halftime lead ever, and that Tim Hardaway Jr., Josh Richardson, and Dorian Finney-Smith had a 50% shooting percentage from 3 is just crazy, and that's what scares me about the Mavs. And I think when they play like that, they can really beat anyone.
Yeah. No, they're a scary team, and like I said, without Porzingis, they were still putting up big numbers. So.
Right.
But we do have to keep in mind they're 1-2, and we say Luka's looked amazing, but he has looked a little tiny bit slower to start some of these games, looking a tiny bit lost in some possessions out there on the floor without as much help and the adjustment to the new teammates. But it's probably just, start of the season jitters that every team is going through, and we're going to see him take over and this team do some awesome things. But that's our little recap of the NBA, the start of the season. We're all really interested, following it closely to see how the season unfolds. This weird 72 game no all-star break thing that we're all watching. But I'm excited. I think it's going to be a great season, and I look forward to recording more podcasts about it. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Press that subscribe button. Please share with your friends, and come back next time because we got some more sports to talk about. Thanks, guys.
We're going to discuss the playoffs. We're going to pick some playoff teams for the NFL season.
What Joe said. That is what we're going to do. So thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.